They laughed when she stopped running. On mile 3 of the night course, with headlamps bobbing and boots thudding through sand, Maya slowed to a walk and planted her hands on her hips as if daring the platoon to pass. Out of gas already, someone barked. The title of the story wrote itself in their snickers. She quit until she carried a 150-pound sergeant 2 miles, and forced every mouth shut. Here's what it looked like. A humid Atlantic wind coming off the pines. Rocks cutting into shoulders. Cadences dissolving into private curses. The course was a figure 8 of hills, trenches, and a flooded low ground everyone called the Pan. Sergeant Harlan, 5'7", 150 on a light day, all sinew and gravel voice, shadowed them like a hawk. Keep moving. Brains before brawn. He'd said it for weeks. Maya Reyes heard it, stored it. She'd wrestled through high school, worked summers stacking wet hay bales on a farm where the bales never cared if you were tired or 5'2". Stopping wasn't surrender, sometimes stopping was choosing where to put your next handhold. Still, nothing makes a platoon cruel like pain. When she eased off the run, the jokes landed like pebbles. Hey Reyes, did your battery die? Want us to call an Uber? She didn't flip them off. She counted breaths and watched boot prints. Sand told stories, who dragged, who bounced, who hit a limp. She saw Harlan studying the Pan's edge, the place where the rain-swollen ditch overflowed under the wire. The thunderhead overhead flashed but held its thunder. Training, not war. Yet every course is a rehearsal for a mystery you didn't plan. They crested a berm and the earth trembled with a heavy rip, like a zipper tearing a tent. The Pan's wall sheared. Water shouldered into the trench and surged ankle-deep to shin-deep to thigh. Someone roared, "Move!" Headlamps sprayed mad halos, bodies pinwheeled, the platoon broke into a herd. Reyes. Harlan's voice knifed the noise. Eyes up. Count. She counted, habit. 12 lights ahead, 3 beside, 4 behind. A shadow slipped, slammed into wire, vanished. The laughers stopped laughing. The storm finally spoke. It was about to get very dark, very fast, and every rule they'd recited all summer would be weighed like wet gear. Maya rolled her shoulders once, like before a match. She looked at the Pan that had become a river, then at the small, wiry man who had taught her to move smart. He lifted 2 fingers, keep your head. And then the bank gave way under him. He slid waist deep, boots sucked under, ruck twisting him sideways. For a second he was just another dark shape in churning water. Most of the platoon stampeded past the breach, instinct screaming forward. Maya did the opposite. She stepped down, let the cold shock bite her thighs, and grabbed for a strap. Her hand slipped, she reset, breath, grip, leverage. I've got you, Sarnt, she said, calm threading panic. He lifted his chin, spat muck, and the jokes from minutes ago felt far away. The water wasn't just cold, it was fast, full of sand and sticks and mean momentum. Maya dug her heels into the collapsing bank and found a root. Harlan's ruck strap skittered through her gloves, she caught his forearm instead. He helped by doing the smartest thing, he stopped fighting and floated. Drop the pack, she said. Negative. Sergeant. He yanked a release. The ruck peeled away, gulped water, and sailed into darkness. Maya leaned back, using her body as counterweight, and edged him toward firmer bank. 2 more boots splashed in, Ortiz and Klein, no jokes now, 1 on each side. Together they made a human triangle, patience at the top. On 3, Maya said. 2. 1. They moved like a hinge. Harlan's chest hit mud, then elbows, then he was up and breathing hard. Rain arrived in heavy cords that flattened the Pan and blurred headlamps into halos. The figure 8 course turned into floating flags and confused shouting. Harlan wrung his sleeves. Reyes, he said between breaths, good call. He pointed up course where the trail climbed toward high ground. We pushed to the rally tree. 5 minutes. Roger. They ran, not sprinting, but that suffering trot the body learns in boot camps and on farms. Maya's heart thudded precisely. The stop had paid in clarity. She thought in checklists. Who's here? Who's not? Where is the easy ground? Where will the next hazard be? Shouts behind, sharp, then cut short. A light went down. The rain masked the ground's voice, but Maya felt a hollow under the packed sand. Left, she snapped, pointing wide of a dark rim. Klein stumbled, swore, recovered. Ahead, the rally tree, a lightning-scarred pine, loomed like a mast. They got there in clumps, soaked, tight-jawed, counting fast. Too short. Harlan swept the lights with his beam, which suddenly jittered. His face went blur-pale, the color that means pain is wearing quiet shoes. "Sergeant," she asked low. He tried to wave it off. He shifted weight and failed to hide the wince. "Ankle," he said, almost embarrassed. Stepped into something at the bank. He tested it, nope. He went down on one knee like a man proposing to gravity. There was a pause. Rain ticked on helmets. Below, the pan growled. "All right," Harlan said, forcing a grin he didn't feel. "Reyes, you take point to the trucks. I'll hobble. 2 miles. Slow as smooth. And smooth as fast," Klein finished, bravado thin. Maya set a hand on Harlan's shoulder and felt him flinch. She didn't ask permission. "Sergeant, I can carry you." Someone snorted, nerves, not malice, old habits trying to survive new facts. The sound lit something in her, not anger, a bright focus. The same spark she'd felt facing a county champ who'd laughed at being matched with a girl and realized too late he'd given her a reason to concentrate. "Reyes," Harlan warned, pride pricking. She met his eyes through rain. "Brains before brawn," she said. "Let me be both." 2 rough miles waited. 2 lights were still missing. For a heartbeat, the rain and silence pressed like a weight. The platoon watched, shifting, torn between instinct and respect. No one wanted to admit the obvious: Harlan wasn't walking 2 miles on that ankle. Maya didn't argue. She knelt, looped his arm over her shoulders, and squatted low. "Lock in, Sergeant," she said simply. He hesitated, jaw tight. "You're half my size." "Exactly. Which means I know leverage." The words cut through his pride better than sympathy could. He exhaled and allowed it. With a grunt, Maya rose, his weight draped over her like the heaviest rock she'd ever shouldered. 150 of bone and grit, rain-slick uniform pressing her spine forward. The platoon gaped. "Move," she barked. 2 miles. Truck lights north. Boots splashed in chorus. Klein muttered, "She's actually doing it." Ortiz answered, "Shut up and cover her flank." Each step was geometry. Maya leaned forward, toes clawing mud, spine steel. Her breath came measured, the way wrestlers breathe through overtime periods. 1, 2, 3. She counted silently, a rhythm that steadied her. The weight wasn't just Harlan, it was their discipline, their belief, their memory of the laughs she'd absorbed without blinking. Harlan tried to lighten himself, but every jolt of his ankle made him hiss. "You've made your point," he muttered. "We're not at the line yet," Maya said. Her voice carried no tremor. Behind them, thunder cracked, echoing like artillery. 2 lights still missing gnawed at everyone. But the course was the course: you reached the trucks, or you didn't. At a shallow rise, Maya stumbled. The mud slicked her heel and she pitched forward. Gasps spiked from the formation. But she dropped one knee, absorbed the weight, then surged upright again without letting Harlan hit the ground. That, more than anything, silenced the last whispers of doubt. They pushed into pine cover. The trail narrowed into roots and ruts. Maya shifted Harlan higher, his arm braced across her chest. Her shoulders burned, thighs quivered. Still she counted. Still she moved. Klein leaned closer, voice low, "Why didn't you quit back at mile 3? Maya's laugh was ragged but real. "Because I don't like being predictable." The words rippled through the formation like a hidden fuse catching spark. The rain eased, leaving a world of dripping leaves and pounding hearts. Ahead, faint truck lights flickered through branches. 1 mile down. 1 mile to go. The last mile was always the cruelest. Trails that had seemed firm became ankle traps, shadows stretched long across the path. Maya's body was screaming now, shoulders raw, breath fiery, calves twitching. Yet she didn't let the rhythm die. Every few steps she shifted Harlan, securing his weight tighter against her. He'd stopped objecting, the set of his jaw said he understood this wasn't about ego anymore. It was about finishing together. Behind them, Ortiz counted cadence under his breath, giving the group a heartbeat, 1-2, 1-2. The platoon, once fractured by doubt and laughter, now moved in strange harmony, as if every stride hinged on Maya's stubborn refusal to stop. The missing lights haunted them. At one bend, Klein broke off to sweep low ground. He came back shaking his head. No time. Trucks first, then search teams. Harlan clenched a fist but stayed silent. Orders had gravity even when they hurt. Maya's vision tunneled. The trees blurred, the only clear things were the glow ahead and the sergeant's steady breathing on her shoulder. Her mind retreated to memories, hay bales stacked until midnight, the time she'd wrestled a boy 40 pounds heavier and won by not surrendering an inch. Pain was temporary. Carrying mattered more. At a washout ditch, she paused. The drop was 2 feet, filled with running water. Harlan shifted. Set me down. She shook her head. Trust me. She stepped down, knees nearly buckling, then surged up the opposite bank in one motion. The platoon behind let out a cheer they didn't realize they'd been holding. Almost there, someone shouted. The lights grew larger, halos of salvation. Engines idled, the smell of diesel mixing with wet pine. Relief surged through the line. For Maya, it was a dangerous surge, adrenaline can make the body reckless. She forced herself to slow just enough, to breathe, to hold form. Finally, the gravel lot opened before them. Headlights flared, catching the rain in sheets of silver. Drill staff rushed forward, their shouts blending disbelief and urgency. What the hell, she carried him. Maya staggered to the nearest truck, bent her knees, and lowered Harlan gently to the bumper. Her arms trembled as if electricity had run out of her muscles. She stood swaying, rain plastering her hair to her face, chest heaving. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then one of the staff sergeants said what everyone thought, 2 miles. You carried him 2 miles. The laughter from earlier felt like a ghost. The platoon stared at her, something raw and new in their eyes, not mockery, not doubt. Respect, heavy as the sergeant she'd just delivered. And yet, the story wasn't finished. 2 lights were still missing out there in the dark. And Maya, muscles quaking, wasn't sure she was done moving. The gravel under Maya's boots still vibrated from the truck's idling engines when she straightened. For most of the platoon, the sight of those headlights meant relief, safety, the finish line finally reached. For her, it meant a decision. The formation huddled close to the warmth of diesel fumes and barking instructors, but it was broken, 2 headlamps missing. 2 bodies absent. Every soldier counted silently, lips moving, heads turning. The names slid unspoken across their faces until Klein said it aloud. Stevens and Ward. Maya felt her stomach drop. She'd seen Ward earlier near the pan, limping, Stevens hauling more weight than his frame should have allowed. And now, gone. One of the staff sergeants barked, Reyes, sit down. You're done. Get those arms checked. She shook her head, muscles still trembling but her mind slicing clear through the fog. 2 aren't back. Klein's voice cracked. Last I saw them, just before the bank gave way. Unease rippled through the group like wind through grass. Everyone knew what that meant, the pan had turned into a death trap. Going back wasn't just risky, it was stupid, maybe suicidal. Regulations said you didn't scatter the unit. But regulations also hadn't been in that black water a few minutes ago. The staff sergeants exchanged loaded glances, trying to calculate risk, paperwork, responsibility. They hesitated, and in that hesitation Maya felt fury coil inside her. She tore off her soaked gloves, her bare fingers raw and split. She pointed back toward the tree line. "Who's with me?" For a breath, silence. Faces in shadow, eyes flickering between duty and fear. Then Ortiz stepped forward. He didn't speak, just tightened the strap on his helmet. Klein followed, jaw locked. Then 3 more. Boots shuffled forward one by one until nearly half the platoon had inched closer, restless, unwilling to let 2 names become ghosts. On the bumper, Harlan shifted, his swollen ankle wrapped in a hasty bandage. His voice, hoarse but sharp, cut across the night. "You've got 10 minutes, Reyes." 10. Then everyone's on trucks. "Clear?" "Clear," she answered. Rain slicked her eyelashes as she turned back toward the black woods. Her legs trembled, not from doubt but from overuse, as if her muscles had burned every reserve during the 2-mile carry. She ignored them. There was still work. They plunged into the dark. The air smelled of iron and pine, wet and dangerous. With fewer lamps, the shadows closed in tighter, every step a guess. Adrenaline pulsed sharper now, because the trucks, the easy salvation, were behind them. Ahead was only the river's roar. Maya's body screamed mutiny, but something deeper overrode it. Not pride. Not glory. A conviction that no soldier deserved to vanish into the storm unseen. The trail back felt twice as long. Shadows lurked, branches slapped across helmets, roots caught boots. The pan's sound grew louder with each step, that guttural churn of water that had already taken pieces of the night. At the edge, Ortiz lifted his lamp and swore. A half-print, mangled in mud, vanished into the flood. Maya crouched low, palms in muck. "Stevens! Ward!" Her voice cracked the night, thrown hard across the water. For a moment, only river, only rain. Then faint, ragged, "Help!" The sound was thin as smoke, but real. "Downriver." "Move!" Maya barked. They ran, boots tearing mud, hearts battering ribs. Branches whipped faces, one soldier tripped and rolled, scrambling up again without a word. The ground slanted steep and treacherous, water chewing at its edges. Ortiz's lamp caught them first, Stevens clinging white-knuckled to a root jutting from the bank, one arm strangling Ward against his chest. Ward's head lolled, lips pale, water surging up to his chin. The root groaned, wood splintering under the weight of 2 men. It looked ready to snap. "Hang on!" Maya shouted, sliding to her knees at the edge. Stevens lifted his head, soaked and wild-eyed. "He's not breathing right." The night, already merciless, just grew darker. The scene branded itself into them, Stevens shaking, clinging like a man nailed to the riverbank, Ward limp against him, the flood biting at both. The roots strained and groaned, each wave chewing away at its hold. Ortiz was already moving. He ripped a rope coil from his kit, hands fast despite the rain. He anchored himself to a pine trunk, looping twice, nodding with muscle memory. "Tie me in," he barked. Maya grabbed the bitter cord, jerking it taut around her waist as a failsafe. "Ward first." Stevens gasped. His voice shredded by water and fear. Maya flattened herself, belly crawling through the mud until her chest hung over the edge. The cold breath of the river hit her face. She reached down, fingers straining, just brushing the sleeve of Ward's jacket. "Push him," she shouted. Stevens twisted, nearly losing grip, but shoved with everything he had left. Ward's body slipped free, rolling into the surge. For a split second Maya thought he'd vanish, sucked away like driftwood. She lunged, fingers hooking his collar, nails tearing. The rope on Ortiz snapped taut, his weight bracing hers. Together they dragged Ward up the bank like wrestlers heaving a prize. He collapsed at their feet, lifeless. His chest barely stirred. Maya's instincts overrode exhaustion. She dropped to his side, shaking water from her hands, pinching his nose. Come on, come on." She pressed her palms, hard and rhythmic, the motions carved into her from CPR drills that always felt hypothetical until now. She breathed into him once, twice, rain dripping into her mouth. Then pressed again. Nothing. "Ward," she shouted, as if his name could tether him. She pressed harder. 1, 2, 3, her arms locked straight though they quaked. Ortiz hovered, helpless. Then, cough. A violent, ugly sputter, water streaming from his lips. His chest heaved shallow, then steadier. Maya laughed once, broken, relief like fire racing her veins. "He's back. Now me!" Stevens shouted hoarsely. But the root wasn't listening. It cracked like a gunshot, and Stevens plunged waist deep, both arms flailing. The current yanked him sideways. "Rope!" Maya yelled. Ortiz hurled the line, but it fell short. Without thinking, she slid down the bank, water knifing to her ribs. The cold stole her breath, but she clawed through it. Her hands seized the root, pried against it with raw knuckles until splinters dug flesh. It split wider. Stevens wrenched free, his arm scraping raw, and collapsed against her shoulder. Together they staggered back toward the rope. Ortiz's arms hauled them both, his muscles bunching, teeth bared. When Stevens' boots hit the mud above, he fell like a sack, coughing, eyes wild. Thought we were done," he rasped. Maya sat back on her heels, blood streaking her knuckles. Rain plastered hair to her face. She smiled crookedly. "Not tonight." They all collapsed in the muck, Ward groaning faintly, Stevens shivering uncontrollably. For long seconds, only the river spoke, mocking, relentless. Then Klein pointed. "We've got to move. They'll seize up if we don't." Ward was barely conscious, Stevens limping. Maya stood, swaying, then crouched. "Help me with him." Together, Ortiz and Klein got Ward onto their shoulders. Stevens leaned on Maya, his weight heavy but alive. The trek back felt endless. Halfway, lights bobbed toward them through the trees. Harlan, hobbling, leaning on two soldiers for balance. His face pale, ankle-wrapped thick, but his voice boomed like a lifeline. "Platoon, form it up. No stragglers. We finish together." The formation drew ragged but real, boots squelching, helmets dripping. They moved as one, every step a declaration. No one was laughing now. The truck's floodlights poured across the clearing, cutting the storm into silver sheets. Every drop that clung to helmets and rifles glowed like sparks in a forge. Soldiers stumbled in with mud to their knees, shoulders sagging, but no one broke formation until the last pair was accounted for. Ward was lowered onto a stretcher immediately, medics swarming with clipped efficiency. His chest still rose shallow but steady beneath the thermal blanket. Stevens sat propped against a wheel, lips blue, eyes wide, mumbling half-coherent thanks to whoever passed closest. The sound of their breathing, wet, ragged, but there, spread through the platoon like an unspoken hymn. Maya staggered into the light last. Her body had gone past pain into a strange, weightless state, as though her nerves had been filed down to dull edges. She could hardly feel her legs, yet she kept moving until she reached the bumper of the first truck. That was where she had set Harlan earlier. Her knees bent without permission, the world tilting. A hand caught her arm. Firm. Grounding. Harlan. He had hauled himself upright, leaning on a crutch someone had fashioned from a snapped pine branch. His ankle was grotesquely swollen, but he refused to sit. Pain etched his features pale, yet his eyes blazed steady, burning enough to command the silence of 30 soldiers and 3 staff sergeants. "Hold formation," he barked, voice raw but carrying. Eyes forward. The platoon, scattered and shaking seconds before, straightened instinctively. They stood dripping, helmets low, boots squelching, but every face turned toward him. Toward her. Harlan's voice hardened. "You all saw it. Reyes carried me 2 miles when I couldn't carry myself. She went back when she could have stayed. She brought 2 of ours out of a river that wanted them gone." His jaw set. "That isn't luck." That isn't just strength. That's what heart looks like." The words landed heavier than thunder. No one moved. The staff sergeants exchanged glances, but even they didn't interrupt. Instructors usually kept stories sharp, quick, stripped of sentiment. This wasn't that. This was testimony. Maya wanted to shrink under it. Her chest still heaved, arms dangling numb at her sides, mud caked to every inch of her uniform. She wasn't some savior, she'd just done what felt impossible because the alternative was worse. But when she tried to drop her eyes, Harlan squeezed her arm tighter. "You turn their noise into fuel," he said low, "just for her. Remember that. They'll never laugh the same way again." Ortiz stepped forward, clapping her back so hard she nearly toppled. "Hell, Reyes, you made carrying look easy." His grin was shaky, but it was real. Klein shook his head slowly, almost reverently. "Guess you weren't out of gas after all." The platoon chuckled, but it wasn't laughter at her. It was laughter with her, a release, a bond. Maya let herself laugh too, ragged and cracked but genuine. The sound loosened something in her ribs, something that had been coiled tight since mile 3 when she'd stopped running and heard the jokes. Engines roared louder as orders came down: load up, secure weapons, return to base. Boots thudded against steel steps, packs slung into bins. The smell of diesel wrapped around them with the promise of warmth. Yet the usual scramble was subdued. Soldiers moved slower, more thoughtful, glancing often at Maya, at Stevens and Ward, at Harlan leaning on his makeshift crutch. She climbed into the truck last. The metal bench rattled under her as she sank down, body giving in at last. She rested her head against the cold window. Outside, the woods bled into blackness, the pan still roaring in the distance, a river that had nearly stolen 3 of theirs. And in that quiet, something settled on her chest heavier than any ruck, the realization that the platoon would never forget this night. The jokes that had once bruised her pride had drowned in the rain. In their place was silence, respect, and something rarer, trust. She closed her eyes, letting the rhythm of the engine hum through her bones. Faces floated behind her lids, Ward coughing water, Stevens clinging to the root, Harlan whispering good call with mud still on his lips. And further back, her wrestling days, the hay bales, the laughter she'd carried for years like hidden weight. Tonight, she hadn't just carried a man. She had carried every sneer, every doubt, and set them down at the truck's floodlights for all to see. The platoon shifted in their seats, some leaning on each other, some already drifting to exhausted half-sleep. But no one dared mock. Not now. Not after watching a 5'2" woman silence an entire storm with her back, her legs, and her refusal to quit. Some stories are about medals. Some about promotions. This wasn't one of them. This was a story about laughter, how it can sting, how it can weigh heavier than steel, and how sometimes, it can be broken. Not with words. Not with speeches. But with 2 brutal miles through mud and rain, a sergeant slung across narrow shoulders, and then the audacity to dive back into black water for 2 more. That was heavier than any ruck. Lighter than any laugh. And it would be remembered. Long after boots dried, long after scars faded, long after the platoon scattered to new posts and new wars, they would carry the memory of this night. The night when Reyes stopped running, yet refused to stop moving.